So I want to welcome everyone into this virtual field trip. It would be lovely to be together in Michigan today, but given that we can't, it's a really fun thing that Ellen is piloting here with the Farm-Based Education Network of translating a tour into the virtual realm. So thanks for being along with us on the journey today, and huge thanks to Ellen and her team for hosting us. I think we'll meet the team members as we go through the about 75 minutes that we'll be together today. And yeah, I just want to appreciate everybody for being here. The Farm-Based Education Network is a network dedicated to supporting you all as farm-based educators, whether you're in community gardens or school gardens or on commercial farms or nonprofit farms. We welcome you into this network, and we're happy to offer these. I have a goal of doing these kinds of field trips once a month. So if anyone who's out there watching would like to host one in the future, please go ahead and get in touch with me and we could set something up. It's really fun to travel virtually around the country and the world to see each other's sites. So I'll stop talking. My name is Vera, but our host today is Ellen. She's going to guide us through our trip. And if anyone, after this is done, we will post the recording on the Farm-Based Education website. If anyone would like, has an issue with that being posted publicly, please chat me or email me at farmbasededucation.org. Otherwise, welcome Ellen. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vera, and thank you for having Tollgate here today, but also for hosting these check-ins, these virtual farm tours, and just really coordinating so much of Farm-Based Education Network. It's meant a lot to me during this time and beforehand, just to meet you and to learn from you. So I'm going to share my screen. Perfect. So I just wanted to welcome you all, and then I'm going to add another request. This is our slide, first of all, that is about how Michigan State University and Michigan State University Extension, of which we're a part, our programs are open to all. So I wanted to make sure I shared that with you. And then thank you, Vera, for asking folks to put their information in the chat. It's super helpful to see where you're all from, and exciting as well. If you're visiting MSU Tollgate Farm, we do have quite a bit of staff and some volunteers on today. But if you could share one thing that you've done as a site that you found has worked to help meet the needs of your staff and or the people you serve during this COVID response time. So we are learning all the time, all of us, as we adapt to this sort of collective trauma and what's happening. And I just know that we can learn from each of you. So this is a short, very short piece about Tollgate. Tollgate is in Novi, Michigan, Southeast Michigan. It's part of MSU Extension. And our mission has been to provide non-formal farm-based learning opportunities for adults and youth in agriculture, natural resources, community food systems, gardens. And we're in this urban setting. We're in Metro Detroit, in a great big area, but we're a 160-acre historic farm. And so today you'll meet our farm director, Mike Mathis, our farm manager, Roy Prentice, our camp coordinator, Sarah Mund, our CSA coordinator, Darby, one of our educational leaders, Jennifer Steyer, Jenny Steyer. There are lots more staff that make up the farm. I wanted you to see that this is our Tollgate team. These are some past and present Tollgate staff, and they make up, the Tollgate staff makes up the system known as Tollgate Farm. But Tollgate staff is joined by the heart of our program really are our volunteers. And the volunteers and the staff work together to realize our programming and care for the site. So we have garden volunteers. We have volunteers who help run the maple sugaring operations. We have volunteers that serve on our financial aid committee and with our community events, with our educational programming, and then we have special projects volunteers. And so together we work to really build connections between the community and the farm and the natural systems of the farm. So We're going to share a little bit about what our role is in helping the farm to thrive and to still meet our mission even during this pandemic. So we know we have a lot in common with all of the farm-based and nature center educators across this country, really across this globe. And we know that we aren't alone as we grapple with how do we meet the needs of the farm, the community. So some of the ways that we have worked to be resilient in this time and that we're learning, we're just really learning as a team, is to care for the farm and the grounds and the animals. We have a crew that are considered essential workers based on the university's definition, and they're essential so that the farm can continue. And so they've worked really hard in that way. Also, we've worked to maintain connections with our community by making phone calls and sending emails and making videos like the one we shared with you to show that we really do, we miss our community and seeing them in person, and we want to stay in touch with them. So I call teachers, we send out messages to them. We also have been working to build virtual community spaces for staff and for youth and for adults. So that's virtual staff meetings, of course, and then some interactive sessions that we'll share about in a little bit. We've also worked to continue to provide food to shareholders through the CSA and provide food for those in need through Plant a Row for the Hungry. And you'll hear about those as well from the folks that help coordinate those. And then this remote learning that I mentioned, it comes in a few different forms, but it's designed to encourage social emotional learning and time spent outdoors and STEAM learning for kids and adults. So that's not been easy, but we've seen some pretty profound results. And so then the last item is that we've been trying to build more partnerships with our community. So Mike Mathis was going to share a little bit from out on the out. Our Special Projects Committee.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mike Mathis. I'm the director here at Tollgate. I'm actually here on the farm. We have a beautiful blue sky, 64-degree day with a little bit breeze here. It's the first day we haven't had hazy skies from wildfire smoke, actually. So kind of really nice fall weather right now. You're behind me, you're seeing what we call our main barn. It's our mid-1800s historic barn and our silos. It's got a fun green color to it. The family that owned the farm starting in the 50s, they donated it, the whole property to Michigan State, and they actually stipulated that fun green color in the agreement that we had to maintain that color. So I think it's been fun for us to figure out how to maintain that color over the years every time we've had to paint that barn. So what Ellen has there on the slide is a little bit of a project we've been working on called our Special Projects Committee. Since Tollgate is not truly a standalone nonprofit, since we're part of the university, we've never really had an advisory board or a governing board or anything like that. I feel like we've missed out on opportunities because of that, on getting dedicated stakeholders and having other people do some work for us to help us out with our mission. There's a lot of people that are really passionate about it. So a few things I wrote on this slide, these goals, I think these are kind of retrospect goals of the things that actually came out of this activity. So I've had about 10 to 15 volunteers coming and going on about a monthly basis in brainstorming meetings about how we can face our financial issues, our programming issues. Core point of the whole thing was just to increase communication with our stakeholders. Because without our in-person programming and early on in the pandemic, a complete lockdown and any volunteering or anything happening on the farm, we just couldn't see anyone in any meaningful capacity. And so we needed to find some way to engage with people so we didn't lose them in the long run. I think one of the things that's going to really come out of this probably is that we'll see more dedicated volunteer labor in the long run, because folks, at least on this committee, are the leaders of our community and our volunteers. And so hopefully they'll help bring other people along as we go. We've been expressing our financial need. While Tollgate is part of the university, we fund right around 50% of all of our operating for the farm. So that in a normal year is about $600,000 we would generate on site in program revenue, conference center rentals, small donations and grants and things like that that we do here at the farm. And so without doing any in-person programming, that's going to be very difficult for us. But I think what we'll be able to do through this committee is really express that need and hopefully take folks that have maybe been small donors in the past and push them to be maybe bigger donors, or help us advocate and go out and find other sources of funding. And then that's kind of in the last point there of identifying prospects and renewing gifts from folks that are already committed to us. A few lessons that I've learned: everything takes more time. It's also very hard to be creative and brainstorm when you're just struggling on your day-to-day tasks and things like that, and when there's so much uncertainty. So we've been like throwing darts at the wall, hoping something would stick in some sort of hybrid in-person or virtual programming, and it's very difficult for people to generate ideas for those things when there's so much uncertainty. But I think the camaraderie and the shared passion for the project is what has shown through, and so I've been really encouraged by that. I'd also encourage anybody, if you're going to try to have some sort of advisory board or fundraising group like this, is start small. Find your really dedicated folks that you know are going to work for you, that are going to put out product, and lean on them, because it's difficult to spread a really wide net and try to do a million things. We found out pretty quick, and so we've been trying to pare back on some of the ideas that we had come to on that group. And Ellen, I will also move locations here. So I'll go find another spot on the farm, and so you can continue to see a little bit more of the property as we go. So whenever you feel like you want to jump in, I'm happy to jump in from a spot on the farm. Any questions about the committee though?
That's awesome, Mike. Thank you. And I think there's another slide ahead for you regarding the Food, Land, and People in Detroit. So
oh yeah,
yep. That way you'll get another spot.
Do you want me to do that now or at another spot?
No, another spot would be great.
Okay.
It's coming up in a little bit.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Thank you. That was so good. So we're going to go to Roy Prentice, who is our farm manager. And he can tell a little bit more about himself and the time that he's been on the farm, and a little bit about how we've cared for the farm during COVID.
Greetings. I'm Roy Prentice. I'm the farm manager here on the property. I've been here and with MSU for a lot of years. We've had an interesting COVID experience, as I'm sure all of you have had. We do maple syrup making in the spring, which typically February, and we go to the beginning of April. Well, 15th, we basically, I'm sorry, March 15th, we basically stopped any public from coming onto the site. And the site was closed to the public from March 15th through about the middle of June. So during that time, we only had essential staff on the property, operations staff taking care of things, the CSA personnel growing the crops for our community supported agriculture plots, and then our animal management people. So it was not much going on during those 3 months. And then MSU Extension, after a lot of consideration and discussions, said that created an avenue to start bringing volunteers back on the site as of about June 15th, about the middle of June. In order for those volunteers to come back on the site, they had to go through a new volunteer screening process that the university instituted. And in fact, all 20,000 MSU volunteers statewide will need to go through the screening process by the end of 2020. But in order to get back at onto Tollgate, our volunteers had to go through that screening process, and then they had to sign an agreement which basically said that they were going to, while they're on the site, have their behaviors conform with the CDC and MSU's requirements. So this is a big deal for us because we have over 200 volunteers that do all sorts of things on the site, primarily work in our garden area, but also help with maple syrup. Some help with the CSA. We have an education garden that works with our summer camps and other things. So not having volunteers on the site was a real problem. We have over 20 ornamental gardens on the site, which basically are pretty much totally cared for by volunteer labor. I help with some of the heavy lifting and the tractor work and bring in mulch, but most of that work is done by the volunteers. So we didn't have any volunteers. Before you know it, you're starting to get a lot of weeds and other things into the gardens. So when June 15th came along, and some of my lead garden volunteers, some of which have been with me for many, many years, went through the VSP process, signed the volunteer agreement, and started coming on the property. And for most of the gardens, that's going to enable us to do kind of a holding action this year so that we can keep the gardens from getting too out of control weed-wise. Several of the gardens, the lead volunteers have really done wonders with their gardens. So some of them are going to come out of this experience really looking as good or better than they did going into it. And they have very strong leads, and they have gathered a team around them that many of those folks have come back. So those are the horticulture gardens. We're really just trying to control things there. There are other two sort of main gardening areas. Is we have a plant a row for the hungry garden, and we have a very strong team with that area, led by Catherine Fitzpatrick. And in order to spread our volunteers out, they've gone from choosing one workday during the week to spreading the volunteers out over 2 workdays. All of the food that's produced goes to a local food bank, and typically we produce over a ton of food. And that we've been doing that for over 10 years, and it's a real integral part of the volunteering program on the site. One of our other main volunteer projects is our nursery, and we use that for 2 purposes. One, we accept donations of plants, and we do divisions of plants on the site that we hold, and then we go back in other gardens as we develop other gardens. The other use of the nursery is as support for our plant sales, and we do a plant sale in the spring and a plant sale in the fall. Those 2 plant sales generate over $10,000 in net revenue, and that money really supports all of the gardening activity on the site. It basically gets turned right back into mulch and compost and plants and anything else that we need to support the horticulture areas on the site. Well, we didn't do a spring plant sale this year because, you know, COVID, we were in the middle of that. Lots of people coming onto the site, and we get a lot of people for our spring plant sale. So that was not going to happen, and it didn't happen. We're in the middle, actually, of going through our fall plant sale. Typically, that's just one Saturday morning. This year, we're doing it on 2 separate Saturdays. So we did it last Saturday and the coming Saturday, and shoppers have to register for an appointment. So we only have 5 shoppers on the site at a time, and we do it at 2 separate mornings. So we're in the middle of that, and that's going real well. So that's the nursery. It's going really well. We have a lot of volunteers, some volunteers coming to the site, and we're really just trying to maintain things. We have a much larger volunteer group that we're working on ways to kind of keep them hooked into the site, with the idea that once we're past COVID and things kind of turn back to some resemblance of normalcy, that, you know, they will come back, and the numbers that they have been on the site in the past come back for our regular Saturday work days, you know, really support us. And so we're reaching out to them in various ways. Actually, tonight we're doing our first general garden volunteer meeting where the membership will join us by Zoom, and we're doing a cooking demonstration. So I'm curious to see how that's going to turn out online. Typically, the person we have do that, you know, prepares meals and passes them around the room. Everybody gets to sample them, so not so much going to do that, but we're going to do it online. I think it'll be great. And then the other piece that we do to try and keep the membership hooked in is we have a newsletter that's focused at the garden crew. Lots of beautiful pictures, writings by our president, nursery manager, and other folks that submit articles to that. And it really helps keep people hooked into the site. So, you know, like many places, we're kind of struggling with different ways to maintain what we've got, try to build for the future, and keep our user groups engaged. And that's kind of how we're working through it.
Thank you, Roy. That was awesome. I wanted to note that on this call is Catherine Fitzpatrick, who heads up the Plant a Row for the Hungry. And Catherine, if you wanted to share anything, feel free to do so. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's great to be with this group today. Just a couple of things. Roy covered it quite well. We got off to a late start, so we had a 4-day marathon planting session to get to what we could get in and give us a chance to take advantage of the great season we had this year in terms of heat. We broke the team because I normally have 10 to 12 volunteers. With COVID, we broke the team into 2 4 to 5 people groups and 2 work days a week, and have been able to basically do a handoff every week from Monday to Thursday teams and continue harvesting and providing the food. So far, we're a little over 700 pounds of vegetables to feed the need in Novi, and I'm hoping we're going to hit around 1,000. Not our best year, but a great year for us considering the circumstances. Thank you. And I wanted to thank, I see Marilyn on the call and a couple other of our dedicated garden volunteers. We thank you so much for what you do for this farm, as well as Maple volunteers and all of our volunteers. So thank you so much. This is where Mike was going to share about kind of a new initiative that came about in the last few months. And so, Mike, are you able to join us?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm at a new spot. I'll cover that really quick. I'm at the pond. We have a couple-acre pond. We do lots of fishing and canoeing and pond study, macroinvertebrate stuff with kids all the time here at this part of the farm. So nice, scenic, beautiful day. There was a turtle swimming right next to me just a second ago. So yeah, what Ellen has on the slide there is this new series, webinar series we've been doing called Race, Food, and Land in Detroit. It's all about the intersect of those 3 things and the Detroit food systems scene, really. We've hosted that and facilitated that with MSU Extension educators, folks that work deeply with people of color and getting them into farming and things like that. It's really an open panel conversation where we invite guest speakers from nonprofits and farms throughout Detroit. And so if you've heard a little bit about Detroit and its food system scene, you know that urban agriculture is kind of a big deal in Detroit. There's a lot going on because there's so much vacant land, but it isn't all that easy for a lot of people to get access to land, to have the same types of resources. And so it's been a really interesting discussion through these 3 different sessions. And so you can actually still join. The last session is on September 24th, which is next Thursday. It's 6:30 to 8 o'clock at night. And we'll have 2 panelists on that one. One of them is African-American gentleman. He started his own business in Detroit, and he's growing crickets for food and selling insects. So the third one is all supposed to be about the future of where do we see this going and how do we move forward on these racial issues in farming in Detroit. We've had 170 people register for the entire series, so really, really good turnout. I would highly suggest, if you want to do these webinar series or lecture series, make sure you record them, because there are still plenty of people that want to pay for just the recordings. So what we've done is it's $10 per session or $25 for all 3 sessions. And there hasn't been any problem with people paying for that to this point. I've offered up basic scholarships. It's fairly inexpensive for me just to waive a fee if somebody really has outstanding need for that series. And then any of the revenue we generate off that, we're going to apply back into programming for farm training for people of color, or other race important food lectures like we've been doing with this to put that money back in. So it's been a nice compliment that we can continue the programming when a lot of other things are having trouble moving forward.
Right, thank you, Mike, so much. Next, we have Darby Anderson, our CSA coordinator, who does amazing work, and she can tell you about this season, how it looked different, but how successful it's been.
Ellen, I want to interrupt you and Darby just for a minute. We have been getting so much information from your staff, and I just want to give a nice pause for anyone to ask a question.
Thank you, yes.
Yeah.
It's a small enough group if you want to just unmute. I think that would work fine. And we'll also sure there's time at the end for questions.
Sure.
I'm curious about the volunteers, just wondering about how many volunteers they are, whether they are returning volunteers, are they youth? Yeah.
Hi, this is Roy Prentice. So we have been building up volunteers over the 25 years or so that I've been here. And I have a core of volunteers who help me with the administration of the other volunteers who probably have been, the people in that committee for the most part have been with me for over 10 years. We get a lot of volunteers through the Extension Master Gardener program. So that's 40 hours of training, 10 weeks, 4 hours a week. And then they, as part of that, the graduates need to go and volunteer somewhere, approved sites, for an additional 40 hours. So that's kind of the entree point into our site. We're real well organized. When volunteers are looking for a place, they gravitate towards us and several other sites in the Detroit metro area. But that's one of the main avenues that volunteers find us. In fact, probably 70 to 80% of our volunteers have come through the Master Gardener program. And then the others are just folks in the community. But there's over 200 in our membership. There's probably 25 or so that are active in the maple syrup program. And then my guess is there's 20 or so that are active in other parts of the site other than the gardens and the maple syrup.
I would also add to what Roy's saying is we're actively still trying to recruit volunteers and kind of not letting a good crisis go to waste here, in that there is a lot of need here. This is also a very healthy thing to do for people's mental health. And I think our activities going forward are going to be to really actively show people how you can be safe at the farm, COVID-19 wise, how we're social distancing, getting that message out, because we have not seen all of our what we would call regular volunteers return. There's a good, nice little core that's come back, but getting people to feel safe and that they can be at the farm is still a message that we got to continue to push and recruit new people, because hopefully there's a renewed interest in gardening because everybody's home gardening now, and that this is still a good place you can still make connections here and get out and do some physical labor and help your mental health a little bit at the farm. So we're recording a fun little appreciation video where we're interviewing the volunteers who've been returning at their work areas. And basically they're saying how amazing it is to be back at the farm and how good it feels to be out and working, and a little bit about what they're doing in the gardens. So that'll be coming out soon as a kind of a way to show some appreciation for folks and then try to continue to recruit people to come back.
I wanted to add quickly too is our community events volunteers. Traditionally, we've had about 250 a year help us with our large community events. Some of those are garden volunteers, and a lot of them come just for the community events. But another very important place of volunteerism on the farm is our Tollgate Farm 4-H Club. We have some dedicated leaders, a general leader, Mary Hutka, and then the youth that are involved. And so they help with our animal chores. They grow food and sell it at farm market. They have just been incredibly dedicated. They show the animals at the fair. And so that's another avenue and place for volunteers. So Darby, if you're able to share about the CSA, that would be great.
Sure. Yeah, so as Ellen said, I'm Darby Anderson. I am the CSA coordinator and the production manager. As you can see in the picture below, that is our crew for the season. So myself and then Will Jaquindi, who was the CSA coordinator up until yesterday. We started a new job today. And then we were lucky enough to have two wonderful women come back and join us part-time on the farm, Katie Gallagher and Gwen Schaller. So in addition to running a CSA program, or community supported agriculture, we also run a beginner farmer training program. So we bring on usually two people who want to learn more about agriculture. Unfortunately, due to COVID and the hiring freeze, we weren't able to bring them on this year, but we were lucky enough to have these two come and join us to kind of shore up our labor shortages. So coming into the year, we have about 4 acres in production of diversified vegetables. I'll kind of do a slow turn for you guys, not to give you any vertigo, but here's our leek field, freshly weeded. Our solanaceous crops looking a little bit worse for wear. They're kind of done for the season. And then we have 3 caterpillar tunnels for tomatoes and peppers. And then these are our fall carrots. So we run a 160 member summer CSA that lasts for 20 weeks. We have about 3 weeks left. And then we go right into a 10-week, slightly smaller fall CSA of mostly storage vegetables, but we try and give them as many greens as we can before we get too many hard frosts. So our system of distribution has changed a little bit due to COVID. Normally we would host distribution every Wednesday in our open air pavilion, and our members would come. They bring their own bag. We'd have things pre-bagged or pre-bundled, and they'd take what they want. If they pull out radishes and they're not sure what to do with them, that's their opportunity to talk to their farmer and ask what it is. Unfortunately, because of COVID and trying to keep everyone healthy, we are now pre-bagging everything to the farm. They do not leave their cars. It's curbside. We come to them, check their name off, and put their share in their car. We were a little bit intimidated by this system at first. We are doing our distribution curbside, as I said, but really trying to make sure that we are getting to know our customers and giving them time to ask us questions. Another big aspect that we incorporated this year was creating a Facebook page. And that Facebook page is exclusive to our members and gives our members a platform to create community, ask questions, share recipes, and just, we have been astounded by how much our members have loved using this resource to connect to each other. And because we can't tell them always what to do with the radish, they have 20 friends on Facebook that can now tell them their favorite ways to prepare that radish. And then also on that Facebook page, we have been sharing things around the farm. So we just had our big winter squash harvest. So sharing pictures of us putting 400 plus spaghetti squash into one of our bulk bins. And also every week we post the share in a plastic bag. They can still see it looks all laid out. And if we have new items, we also highlight that. So if they don't know what mustard greens are, we make sure that if they look at the picture, they can figure out what mustard greens are. And in addition to kind of keeping people in the know, something we've always done, but we really try to be very descriptive in it, is a weekly newsletter that has an educational component, so talking about how we harvest tomatoes or something like that, as well as a few recipe shares and the share for the week, so that they all know what's coming for them. And then to wrap up my CSE, have learned a lot about how much you have to really work at keeping the customers engaged and happy, and everyone has been really receptive to what we have been able to put out for them. We've had really positive feedback. We've also learned that pre-bagging the shares takes a lot more time than our previous method of the buffet style. So budgeting a lot more time to get those shares bagged up so they're ready to go. Fortunate to have that we can easily loop people in and then back off and have 2 lanes of traffic. That has helped a lot. So we haven't had any mishaps or anything like that with people getting on and off the farm when they pick up their share.
Darby, that was wonderful. I think what we'll do, I'll share the next slide, but I think that we'll need to keep moving. This is a very important series that Will just worked on with Darby called Mornings on the Farm. And it was meant to be in person originally, Sunday mornings. I think they were 3 hours long, but they were virtual, and I think it went well. As you can see, we have, there are technical challenges with virtual programming from out in the field. We've overcome a lot of them, but we're still learning. So I will share very briefly, we also did a virtual school garden series with our colleagues in MSU Extension Community Food Systems, including Christine Hahn and myself and our children's garden director and others who worked to put on a spring virtual school garden series. And then we are planning a fall one, which starts out with seed saving and a session on indigenous gardening and others. So that's coming up this fall. That's open to all. And that spring series, we did have 440 registrants, about 200 on at a session. And we all learned a lot together. So we also work together with 4-H. So again, 4-H and Mary Hutt Cub is a very active 4-H club on the site with kids from 5 to 19, but a wide range of kids, very active. And they every year get donations from seed companies donated to the club, and then the club distributes them. This year they distributed seeds to over 55 school and community gardens. And that was incredible. We had a starting and sustaining a school garden workshop. It's annual. Christine works on it, and several of us are involved in that. But again, that was supposed to be May 1st and it had to be canceled. So that's the virtual school garden series. But both Tollgate Farm staff and community food systems team members worked together to take the remaining seed packets. There were about 4,000, and we created a registration and sent those to people, to school garden and community garden organizers. Some of them sent them on to families in need so that they could home garden. So next we have Sarah Mund, who is our day camp coordinator. And she has done an amazing job and had her first season in 2019. And then this was to be her second season. And so I'll let Sarah tell about the way that she shared summer camp adventure.
Hi guys, I'm Sarah Mund, and I am the camp coordinator here at Tollgate. And as you can see, I am with the goats right now in the goat barn. And over here is where we have the goats, the sheep, we have ducks, chickens. And so this is kind of the heart of where all of our camp programs would be during a normal year. And obviously this has not been a normal year. So we've done our best to adapt and to bring this kind of experience that we offer at Tollgate to campers' homes. So we did a few different options to bring camp outside of Tollgate. And so the first thing that we decided to do was we did camp in a box. So we had 2 different camp programs, one a garden box and one a survival box. And we filled those boxes with a bunch of different camp activities that were easy to do at home, that required minimal materials. And if it required special materials, we would send that in the box. Goats like to eat my clothing right now. And then a bunch of kind of cute little Tollgate memorabilia and items. And so definitely the survival camp was the successful one of the 2. It had fire starters, goat tying lessons, what other things? Oh, compass reading, that kind of stuff. And the feedback that I got from that is that families really enjoyed it, and those were really useful. And then the garden time, I thought it was the most bang for the buck. These were $45 boxes, and they had at least $45 worth of items, and then the shipping, and then just the lessons. And so that was a fun activity. Definitely learned a lot from the building of them and what I would do differently if I did it again, which was not laminating all the activities because that was very time consuming for 40 boxes. But that was great, and we shipped those out. And then definitely the other thing was shipping was very expensive. And so if we did that different, we'd figure out a way how a lot of the customers were local. So if we could just do a pickup or a drive around and drop off. And then the other thing we offered was we typically have 8 weeks of camp here on the farm during the summer. And so since we couldn't do that, we offered 10 weeks of virtual but non-virtual camp that was free and available to the public, that had a bunch of activities that we would typically do at camp, but could be easily done at home, like studying transpiration with plants, tie-dye with natural dyes, garden kitchen snacks. And so every week we would have a different garden kitchen video. And then we wanted to bring some of our, because animals are a huge part of our program, so every week we would have a different animal tour, animal talk video, where we talked about one of the animals at our farm and go into fun facts, detail, what type of breed, what they do, what their job is at the farm, kind of stuff. And slowly but surely we got more traction throughout the summer, and we know that it's not the same as coming to the farm. It's not the same experience, but we're happy that we were able to at least offer something that was accessible to everyone and was free and easy to access. And if you missed the week, everything is still up and available for families to use.
Well, thank you, Sarah, so much. Another tack that we took was for youth, but for the slightly older camper, were virtual interactive specialty camps. And so these are camps I typically run and that I have a passion for. So a birding camp that's done in collaboration with MSU Kellogg Biological Station and the Bird Sanctuary across the state from us, but we've been holding that camp for 4 years and it's super popular and exciting. The kids get to get on a bus and go over and camp under the stars and do birding with the educators there. An outdoor adventures camp about kind of outdoor skills, and then a vet science camp. So these are slightly older campers. We found, interestingly enough, I was a great skeptic about how do you do experiential education virtually. I was very moved by what actually happened, but we did see people from many states, California and Oregon and New York, and also many counties. So kids that normally would not be able to come to the farm, including kids nearby, but in settings where they might have difficulty coming. The bulk were still Michigan kids. They were very interactive and they were inclusive. There was a lot of collaboration with science educators in MSU Extension across the state. So that was exciting and super satisfying. And then we did a lot of STEM challenges. So each day they would have a challenge and it would involve going outdoors and doing something, maybe building a nest and then dropping an egg in the nest to study, you know, kind of engineering design. But there were several things. One of the things for Vet Science Camp was these were week-long series. They met every day from an hour to an hour and a half. Kids were very connected with one another very quickly and supportive of each other. They would chat. In the chat, they would unmute and talk. They would ask questions. They would do a hands-on activity in every session. And for Vet Science, first day got kind of challenged to choose an animal, species and a system, a body system, and to create a model of it. Sarah did an activity with them where they were creating cattle chutes based on some of Temple Grandin's work. We had a lot of vets visit that camp and animal science educators, as I said. And as you can see, the goat and the chicken, the horse getting a dental workup. Animals were a big part of that week. And the cool thing is, something different, the campers had their own animals with them, ferrets and tropical birds and goats and dogs and cats. And so we worked really hard to make it inclusive. So we had about 30 campers in that. In the Winged Wonders, we had 50. And then the outdoor skills, we had about 13, which is coincidentally the exact size of one of our camper groups. Another aspect of it's really part of our farm camp is our work with the 13 to 19-year-old. So we have something in non-pandemic times. Our stewards program means that a 13 to 19-year-old does an interview, fills out an application, and then comes to be a part of the leadership of the camp by assisting the adult staff and mentoring the younger camper. And so it's become a community. And what I saw was grief and loss happening in that community because a lot of these teens have spent years with us, several weeks of summer. And so it's a part of their growing an identity. it is about youth development for those teens, but we see amazing things. So what we did was hold a virtual series. Certainly, just like virtual camp is really not camp, it was something very different, but we met every other week and we had about 55 kids sign up, about 20 to 30 on a session. And these are some of the topics that we explored. So we're really focused on resilience and on mental health and social, emotional, and connecting. So the teens were very much a part. There was a subgroup of them, about a handful, that met regularly to plan and reflect on the series, and they're planning a series for the coming year. So we're excited about that. And as a part of that, this year we were supposed to have our first ever Steward Sustainability Leadership Institute, and worked very hard to build connections and develop this for that slightly older group, the 15 to 19-year-old steward, who wanted to take leadership a step further and really focus on sustainability. And so these are some of the components of that series. Definitely all of the learning at the farm is place-based. So we're in the middle of looking for partners, community partners, and possible grants to be able to run this in 2021. So it's very powerful. This is just a list of what we hope would be outcomes for those young folks who would be exploring workforce and career preparation in any career, because we're learning that all careers, sustainability is key to all careers really at this point. So Sarah, this would be a great place. We're going to venture into some ideas that Sarah's been doing an amazing job with, some programs for young kids and story time.
Hello. So I'm still out here with the lovely goats, and I have to say this has been the highlight of my year, to be able to host our virtual goat story times every Friday. And so we just started it in September, and so every Friday we host virtual goat story time, where we try to incorporate a goat or farm or food, anything that kind of screams Tollgate children's story. We read it, we talk about the goats, we hang out with the goats, we just watch them play on their playground. The kids are able to ask questions. We answer any question that we have or we can, and then if we can't answer them, we follow up with the email. We do our research and we learn as we go. And so it's been a fun experience. We've learned a lot. We learned what kind of microphones to use and what not to use. And then at the end, we try to incorporate a activity or lesson that relates to the book. And so this week we're doing a food alphabet book. And so we're gonna do a goat taste testing. So the goats will get to taste a bunch of different vegetables from the farm, and we'll see what they like and what they don't like. And so far I've been getting a lot of feedback, and I've learned a lot about the time frame and what people like and what people don't like. And so far people are loving it, and people just like to see goats. They're definitely a selling point, and they're cute and they make people happy, as you can see.
It's so true. Thank you, Sarah. So exciting to have goat story time happening. We also have virtual goat encounters where you can sign up and pay to have a message from the goats to someone you love, so and that you care about. And so that's happening, and is just another way for us to share the farm with others. So we're almost wrapping up, and I want to make sure there's time for questions. So I think we're right on track. One of the other things that we did, Jenny Spires on the call, we did early on, we were doing extended place-based learning modules with schools, and like a whole four classes of first graders. They came in the fall, they learned about animal adaptations to weather, and then we saw them virtually through the year. So we were doing this before the pandemic so that we could maintain relationship with them. And then they were going to help us create a pollinator garden and then come back and install the pollinator garden. So all of our spring field trips were canceled, including that school's field trips. So Jenny did an amazing job, and we worked together to create video segments of the pollinator project, and it's on our website. And those were free for folks to participate in so that teachers or families doing home-based learning could take on a pollinator project, even if it was a small container in their backyard. And so that was fun to create, and we learned a lot. We had to teach ourselves video editing, and we're still learning that process. So, but what we're doing for schools and home-based learners is similar. We actually created series based similar to our existing in-person programs. One is called Follow the Nutrient Trail, and the other is The Secret Life of Trees. We tried to cover the base of at least K through 5. The trees is for K through 2, and the other program is for 3rd through 5th grade. And we are getting teachers asking about it. We also did quite a bit of surveying to see what home-based learners, homeschoolers, and school teachers are feeling and what they need. And we've gotten a lot of feedback that's been helpful in the planning. So these are just getting launched now. We've been working on recording segments, but they're made up of video segments, interactive sessions, like once a week for 5 weeks, or they could be tailored to be a week-long intensive. And then there's also journal pages. Jenny's done a great job making a template for the journal pages. And so they're like that science and Winged Wonders and Outdoor Adventure. They're all designed to have an interactive challenge, hands-on activity that we do with them while they're on the Zoom. And many of those involve going outside to do something and come back in and share about it. And they most include a place-based action project that would be helping their community around them in a real world issue. So this is just, as I said, getting launched. We had hoped to do more, but we've had some changes that have made us cut back. And so we're just trying to maintain sustainability. So it's 2:05. I want to make sure that we're not forgetting anything, but also that there's time to ask questions. So if you have questions of anyone who shared today or any questions, we'll do our best to answer them.
Thanks, Ellen. So I'm so glad to see your email address on there in case anyone would like to follow up with Ellen after. But my question was around the geography of your summer camp participants. I think that's really amazing that you had people from around the country. And I was wondering, even if it was just a few, but I was wondering if you marketed, like did you do outreach in communities beyond your direct community, or was that a total surprise to you? And is that something that you do again?
It's a good question. Marketing was very intense. We have like a 5-page marketing media plan, but it's mostly focused around our communities in Southeast Detroit, or Southeast Michigan and Detroit, metropolitan Detroit. So I would say it was a surprise. We found that the word started getting just shared beyond our area. So occasionally, like one example is a grandchild of someone who used to live in Michigan and had been connected to KBS, Tollgate, garden volunteers who shared it with their family members in other states. So I think it was, I would say that was word of mouth for sure. The fact that it went like 11 counties in Michigan, that did not surprise us as much because we did publicize it through MSU Extension on a statewide level. And we're grateful to do that. And we're seeing others at Extension doing that. We see that we might have one child from this county or one child from another county. So, but what we are seeing is that families and kids are self-selecting for the topics that they're interested in. And so very motivated, eager learners, and that's super satisfying to have a good go into the topic that we're exploring. So good.
Thanks. And there's another question in the chat around the size of your staff, specifically on your education team.
Yeah. So the size of the staff is, I call it skeletal. Right now, in terms of kind of core education team, we had 2 full-time and 2 that were, I think they're 20 hours approximately. And then we had about 8 part-time on-call staff. So our 8 part-time on-call staff are, I don't know if it's officially furloughed, but they're not currently working. We don't have in-person programs. We wish that they could be with us and working, because we are strapped for you know, the programming that's going on, as Mike said, does take a lot of infrastructure and support. And so we're trying to tailor what we do with our capacity in terms of staff hours. It's a good question. Mike, do you want to add anything along those lines?
Yeah, in a typical year when we staff up for seasonal staff with summer camp, we're at like 40, 41 people that work at the farm, exclusively at the farm. Right now, I would say we only have 3 people that are really purely in programming roles. And with the law, we just had a resignation with our CSA. And so that's even got diluted even more recently. It's just been very difficult to raise the revenue to support the positions. And so we've had to be a lot more creative and scale back and be smart about where we're putting our time recently.
And also, Hallie's also asking, is your educational staff creating those virtual series that you shared about?
We are, yes. And while over the summer, Jenny Spire, who's on the call, has worked with me really intensively to create what we've created so far. And then we also, I mean, our animal care coordinator, our livestock coordinator, who also left because they were transferred to another state, the family, but we have a part-time animal coordinator right now. All of those folks, Darby as CSA coordinator, people, Roy Prentice as farm manager, are contributing. We're calling on each other to help create these small video segments and then to contribute their knowledge and expertise. What we really wish that we had was on-site video editing volunteers who love to do that because it's fun, but it's very time consuming. So good question. Did that answer your question, Vera?
Hallie, did that answer your question?
Hallie.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just so impressed with all the content that you all have been able to put out on that small staff team.
Thank you. I'm curious about other farms, and because I've been blessed to be able to be a part of Vera's community check-ins and hearing all the different ideas, and we learn from other ideas, and then I feel like it's a grand experiment, right, for all of us in society and around the globe. But others, do you have other ideas that you found that worked really well? Because we're very eager to learn.
Gosh, I say you are doing just about everything that we've thought of as well, you know, from virtual camps to sending camp materials home, the camp in the box, to regular like weekly video or virtual experiences. I really am impressed by the virtual series, and I'm curious how many people have signed up for that. Is that something that's fitting into more like a homeschool platform for education, or like the public schools signing up for that?
Yeah, it's great question, and we don't know. Based on the summer was like an opportunity to pilot and try some things out, and once we saw how well some of them worked, especially building the culture of community and the connection that we see kids needing so much, we are just experimenting. So we've just launched them. They're not filling quickly. The others didn't either. So we very much do aggressively market and need to and get the word out everywhere possible. But I would say with our survey, for instance, out of, I think we had at one point 115 responses, and more than maybe 80% of those were home-based learners, and a lot of them experienced homeschoolers. So that's interesting. Teachers are interested. As I said, they're calling me. They're starting to say, can we set this up? Can we do this? When can we do this? So I do feel like they will be of interest, and that we will be filling up, and that we may even have requests more than we can handle, because we would be working with one class, maybe 2 classes at a time, to be able to keep it interactive and not be a webinar or something without that connection. So so we can keep you posted. As we said, we had other hopes to do other series, both vet science and our harvest farm ecology, but we're trying to keep it small and see if it does meet a need. What we are hearing is that teachers some of them are not quite ready to make that decision because school just started and they're adjusting to all the changes that are happening.
Yeah, and we've heard that there is, unlike the spring, there's a little bit more of a strict protocol for like making sure each curriculum that's introduced is like meeting a criteria or held to certain standards and approved by the districts. So I don't know if that will create barriers to you all, and it hasn't held us back from creating the virtual content because we figure, you know, the more the merrier as far as outside contributors to the virtual learning. But that's one of the things that feels like a shift from the spring, is that, you know, the districts want to see the curriculum that's being implemented in advance.
Right. And even the permissions are taking longer for teachers to get. So it's a good point. We do work to have our programs are all inquiry focused and have a place-based component to them in terms of a possible action project. And but we do work to align them with the core literacy and math and next generation science standards, especially. So we do share that with the hope, and in the past, it's been important for our teachers to know that so that we can actually not be an add-on to their teaching goals and their outcomes, but that they could have us help them reach their goals and kind of take the load off of them. So that's what our hope is.
Well, yeah, and hitting those math and literacy standards are seeming like quite a priority versus like the standards for science is what we've heard as well, is that math and literacy is the focus.
Yep, I'm hearing that too. So.
Very cool. Thank you.
That just about brings us up to time. So I think we'll close things out with a big thank you to Ellen for organizing this, and Mike and Roy and Sarah and Darby and Jenny. Who else was there that I forgot? I really appreciate everyone who was able to come today, and just encourage you to reach out to Ellen with any questions. She's super brilliant and super responsive. And so again, just thank you, Ellen, for stepping up to lead this today. The next upcoming workshop that we have on the calendar for FBEN is about historic structural racism in the food system, and it's led by a farmer and a scholar from Washington, D.C. It's going to be really great, and so I encourage you all to check that out, and I'll drop the link into the chat box. There's two parts to this. The first one is looking at historical structural racism, and the second part is looking at present-day resistance to structural racism in the food system. So please go ahead, and it's a sliding scale registration fee for those. So thank you, everybody, for your time today, and I look forward to seeing you all on future calls, and be in touch with any questions or ideas for the future. Take care, everyone.
Yeah,
thank you, Ellen,
for having us, and thank you, everyone, for joining us. I'll see you.
Yeah.
Calls.
Great. Have a great day. Bye, everyone.